Welcome to the Deer Society podcast. Here's your host, Brian Lemke.
Yeah, this is who I am. Well, I'm a deer hunting man.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Deer Society podcast. Thanks for tuning in. It's an exciting time of year. We got deer season right around the corner. You know, we're here first part of September. We're all getting ready, all getting jacked up. I got JJ with me and also joined today by Andrew Cheslock. What's going on, guys?
Getting ready. 2 weeks till season and way too much work to do.
I'm jacked. I'm ready to get away from the editing studio for a little bit and get some fresh air, get up about 20 feet and start cranking whitetails.
That's right. Well, seasons are already opening in some southern parts of the state. You see some deer dropping. Western guys are getting ready. You know, I see mule deer falling, deer shedding their velvet right now up by us, so that's kind of exciting. We got a couple weeks here yet in Minnesota. We open a little later this year. I think it's it's September 18th, so we have a couple weeks here yet, but exciting stuff to come. All pumped up about the season. But for this podcast, we're going to do something a little different. We posted last night on the Deer Society social pages, so Facebook, Instagram. If you're following along, you might have seen it. If not, pay attention because we're going to do this more in the future. But posted some questions, or posted it out there that we were going to do a podcast today and asked you guys for to tell us what you wanted to talk about. Throw us some questions and some topics. And we got some really cool stuff that came in. Some cool stuff that really applies to this time of year. So we got some questions. JJ is going to kind of kick it off here. But thanks you guys for sending questions, and hopefully we're going to do this some more. So let's get into it.
Yeah, so we posted, like Brian said, on Instagram, Facebook. Another way you could post a question could be on this YouTube video, and then we can follow that up in the next podcast too. So another way to ask a question there as well. Couple of them relating to mock scrapes right away, from Caleb Phillips. Just wants us to talk about mock scrapes for different age class bucks, how they react to them versus natural scrapes. I will let Lemke go first.
Yeah, right on, mock scrapes. So, I guess when I think of scrapes, and I think a lot of people think of scrapes, they think of that October time frame or late October, when bucks are really actively checking them and scent checking for does and things like that. But scrapes are really a year-round thing. Especially now, out being on a property of mine yesterday, saw a lot of scrapes that were just freshly opened up. Definitely a place where bucks and does even too will communicate through scent. We're at the time of the year where bucks have been bachelored up all summer on a strict feeding pattern. You see a lot of bucks together. They're getting along right now. Well, right now as well, they're starting to shed their velvet. So as they do that, testosterone levels are changing. They're going to start to become less tolerant. They're going to move a little bit, and they're going to start using those scrapes to mark their territory. So they're going to, you'll see paw marks in the ground, but really they're leaving their scent there and starting to establish their home areas. Now, mock scrapes, versus natural scrapes, you hope that bucks really use them the same way. You don't want a buck to be able to identify what's a mock scrape and what's a natural scrape. You want to make your mock scrapes as natural as possible. So, to answer that question, you would hope, and the goal is to have bucks of any age class using those mock scrapes the same as they would use a natural scrape.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think mock scrape, for the most part, in the way I use them, is just a starting point for those, this question refers to as natural scrapes. So just kind of setting it up, getting some type of deer using them early, and then, then that natural scent starts to go into the scrape. And then at that point, it's no longer a mock scrape and it's an actual real working scrape. So I think as long as you think of them as one and the same, that's huge. And I've been seeing them all summer. I mean, I was, mowing trails, putting in food plots. There were already scrapes there. So it's not like they're just using them in the fall. They're using them all year round, communicate with each other, see who's in the area. But I think bucks of all age classes use them the same. I think they're probably a little bit more tentative when they go into them, especially if it is a new scrape, like a mock scrape that hasn't been there before. They're going to analyze it, smell it, kind of figure out what's going on. Whereas a young buck, he might smell human scent or rubber or something foreign and probably still going to pee in it. So they use them a little bit different, but as long as your scrapes are natural, I think that's the key.
I kind of think of like mock scrapes or just scrapes in general. It's kind of like you got your favorite bar, your favorite burger joint. Like typically, like all the people that are there, the regulars and stuff, and then all of a sudden you'll notice like when something's brand new, or someone new comes walking, you're like, hey, what's their story? Where are they from? Or what's going on over here? It's kind of the same thing with these scrapes. A lot of the bucks that have their core area or wherever that scrape is in their core area, they're gonna know when someone new comes rolling into town, and then they're gonna investigate, track that person, that other deer down, that other buck down, and see what their story is, and match up later down the road, or that new one might just be a passerby.
Yeah, and if you are using scents, like we've been trying the raw frozen scents, you want something real natural and actually fresh, and not just something that's been sitting on the shelf for a while, because that's really going to throw them off. Like you said, something new, that's just not right.
Definitely might want to think about doing a little bit of research with the scents that you're using. Make sure it is more of like a natural scent, not necessarily like a synthetic. I know some people have some success with synthetics, but I think with my experience with using more of a raw, real scent, urine, or whatever that is, I tend to have a little bit more success with that versus like a synthetic or something fake or something watered down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right on the money there. And whether you use something in your scrape or not, a lot of times, like here in Minnesota, for example, we can't use any scents, whether it's synthetic or raw, whatever. We can't use it. Now, obviously, like I'm going to Kansas this year, like I'm going to have raw scents in my arsenal because, we believe in it. We're testing it out, and it's worked really well for us so far. They have a scrape lure out there that works great. I'll definitely be making some raw scrapes and putting that in it. But here in Minnesota, we can't do that. So, it's just a matter of going in there, finding the right licking branch, or even creating a licking branch, tie one up. There's guys that are using, ropes or vines that are having a lot of success. But finding a good spot that's open and flat ground, a lot of times, guys ask where to put mock scrapes. Flat ground, deer like to scrape on that flat ground. Don't put it on a hillside, something that's easily accessible. And put them in a spot where deer are already traveling, so they're going to be close to it. But, take a rake, take a stick, something to disturb that ground, try to get the leaves and the grass and stuff out of it. So you don't always need a scent, but, sometimes they can be helpful too.
You made a really good point there. Like before you do any kind of mock scrapes or any kind of scrapes with scents or synthetics, whatever it might be, definitely double check your rules and regulations. Some states they might have changed recently, or they're really locking down on using those certain attractants. So definitely double check your rules and regulations, folks.
Yeah, and another question here that kind of rolls right into what we're talking about is from James Geronicos. I apologize if that's not how you pronounce your last name, James G. But hunting mock scrapes and placement of mock scrapes is kind of a topic he wanted us to cover. So again, start with Lemke and roll through.
Yeah. So mock scrapes, again, I just kind of touched it where to put them. I like to put them where I know deer are traveling already. I don't think that you want to make a mock scrape out in the middle of nowhere. I think you have better success if you get them in a strategic place. I'm a believer in everything that you do to add a variable to where you're hunting. Do it in a way that puts the odds in your favor, and you can strategize upon it from a hunting standpoint. So if I'm going to make a mock scrape, I'm going to make it in a place where I want a deer to eventually end up, even if I'm doing it right now and it's a mock scrape where I think that bucks are really going to frequent during the pre-rut. Well, I'm thinking about where I'm going to hunt during the pre-rut during that time so that I can capitalize on where I'm putting that mock scrape. So, a great place to put them is, again, there's a lot of variables here, but on field edges, put them where you're going to hunt close to. Flat ground, I think, is a key thing, and strategize around them. Use your trail cameras. It's a great place to gather inventory, scrapes, mock scrapes. And again, like JJ said, mock scrapes, they're kind of the same as a scrape. You want them to be as natural as possible. I'll even do some opening up of an already natural scrape, now is that a mock scrape or natural scrape? Again, same thing. Just open it up a little early, make it a little more enticing for a deer to come in there, put your trail camera there. Great place to gather inventory.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think one of the main ways that I use mock scrapes, and I really like it for a couple of reasons, is just putting them on trails. So some properties I hunt have, golf cart trails or walking trails or old logging road or whatever it may be. Like Brian said, it's a nice flat surface, so it's a great place for that visual. High traffic area, which typically these trails are, because deer like the least resistance possible when they're walking. And then it makes for a great place to self-film. So if you're sitting there looking over, a trail system, you got a couple mock scrapes, it gives you time. I know, Andrew, you self-film a lot. Brian, you self-film a lot. Gives you time to set up your camera, know where they're going to stop, how they're going to, hit that area. You're going to have your distance already ranged out. Just a lot of things when it comes to self-filming. It makes it much easier to hunt a scrape like that on a trail where, some of the variables are taken out of it. And that's just a way that I've had success and really enjoy using scrapes or mock scrapes.
My Iowa hunt last year, I had 2 really good encounters, and one of them, I won't give the ending away, but it ended up turning out pretty good. I actually went into this piece of property in Iowa, and I made a mock scrape, hopefully, because I knew the trail that these bucks were coming off of. I just needed them to stop. I didn't necessarily want to stop them by making some sort of noise or grunt at them, because it was a really quiet day, so I wanted them to stop on their own and then shot for me. And then for this year, I'm going to be hunting in Illinois, again, going in a piece of property blind. So I'm definitely going to throw out some mock scrapes this year to try to start gathering like a little bit of an inventory, see what bucks are in the area, and kind of beep bop around that way and really rely heavily on cameras and mock scrapes for kind of the first step of figuring out this piece of property I'm going to hunt in Illinois.
Absolutely. Something I want to touch on with scrapes too is that, if you've read a lot of articles or, watched a lot of TV, and there's a lot of people who have preached, hunt downwind of these scrapes. And, that's kind of a controversial thing in my mind. And I'm not saying that this is the right way, but what I've always had success with and the people I have filmed have had success with all over the country really is hunt by your mock scrapes. I don't know, I like the theory and I like the idea of, a big buck going downwind of a mock scrape and just scent checking it. But I can't say that out of everywhere that I've been, I've ever really witnessed that. I think if a buck is going to come in close enough to a scrape to check it with his nose, I think that he's going to come in and check it, so I'm not saying that the people that say hunt downwind of a scrape are wrong, because that's not wrong. But I would say don't focus too much on that. If you're going to put a scrape in or a mock scrape, or you find a scrape that you're going to hunt over or hunt around, hunt so you can shoot that scrape. Because I would tell you that more than likely, your target buck, if he comes in there, he's in the area and everything happens the right way, he's going to end up with his nose or, in that scrape. So, see what works for you. But, maybe don't focus so much on downwind of the scrape. Put that scrape where you can shoot to it.
Yeah, and just talking about scrapes and when they're active too, once you really hit the rut and post rut, around here early November to mid-November, kind of into late November when the bucks are locked on does, it seems like those scrapes really dry up too. And you just see leaves on the scrapes, and you watch bucks walk by and they just, they could care less because they just care about fresh scent on a fresh hot doe. So, scrapes are really good up here September, October, and then once you really hit that rut, post-rut, they get cold too. So that's a big part of it.
You just got to be adaptive. You just got to do what the bucks are doing or follow where the bucks are going and just be as mobile as you possibly can. I know not all of us have that luxury. Some of us got smaller tracks, but you just got to adapt to what they're doing. Got to be mobile.
One last thing on this topic of mock scrapes is, sometimes you get in a spot where you're going to hunt, where you think it might be a great spot for a scrape, but you just don't have the right branch or you don't have the right tree. Be innovative there. I've seen, guys, like I said before, use a rope, hang a vine, use some, yarn and tie the right limb. Guys will use, there's products out there like Hodag that you can use that, you can put in the ground in the middle of a field if that's where you want a scrape or a licking branch. So you can get creative with that too. Again, it just goes back to the same thing. If you want to hunt in a certain spot and you want to put a mock scrape there, be innovative. There's definitely different ways to do it, even if you don't have the right branch there.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, sometimes there's too many options for mock scrapes. So you could go to a field edge and, the farmer doesn't trim any trees. then every 10 feet there's, an overhanging branch. So you could go through earlier in the year and just cut off 90% of those, pick the best ones, and either hunt next to that or put a camera on that too. So sometimes there's too many options.
Right on. Anything else on mock scrapes?
One little thing I was thinking about too is sometimes I've noticed on field edges that deer prefer to start eating certain trees earlier in the year than others. So like we have apple trees or some like maples or something that are on the edge and deer eating them. So all those leaves are actually gone already, and it seems like it's just the start of a scrape system. They're going in there, they're eating, all that foliage, and then all that scent is all over the branches, and then it just seems to kind of cycle through, and next thing you know, there's scrapes on the ground, and that's just the most active spot. So maybe keep an eye on that. It's a small tip.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, deer, they're curious creatures, so they're going to come in and investigate what's going on over there. So it doesn't have to necessarily be, quote unquote, the prettiest looking thing. They're, like I said, they're creatures of curiosity. They're going to come in and check it out. So if you can kind of keep that in a little tidbit in the back of your mind or in your arsenal, and use that to your advantage, later this season.
Yeah, and another thing too is I've made some mock scrapes kind of the cheap way where you hang a branch and, tie it up or screw it to a tree or something for that licking branch. And you got to pick the right branch too, because some of them just get brittle and snap and then it's, completely gone by the next time you get there. So pick the right type of branch if you're going to make a mock scrape. Or like they said, the Hodag system or the scrape. There's different products out there, but just pay attention to that. Don't use some old dead branch that's just going to break, and then next thing you know, they're not using your spot.
Yeah. I would even say if I can find it in the woods, ideally I'd use, a pretty sturdy oak branch. Still got some, they typically hold their leaves a little bit and a little bit longer than normal. So, find something sturdy and tie it up good because, a buck's going to come in there. He's going to rub his antlers on it and give her hell really to mark that territory. So, do it right the first time. Get yourself some good rope or yarn if you're going to go that direction.
Well, another question we got from Cody Marlowe. The best ways to hold deer on your farm when there's pressure all around. We'll go with Andrew first on this one.
It might be just kind of a given, but stay out as much as possible. Well, hunt smart. Don't hunt hard, but hunt smart. Pick your windows. You might go hard for 3-4 days, and then I'd stay out as much as you can. And if you can use your trail cameras or cell cameras or whatever you got, and let that kind of do the work. If you're able to, cruise around the property edges and just kind of observe from afar. If you got one particular buck that's kind of giving you the fits or skirting you or whatever, we'll try to figure out from afar what he's doing, where he's coming, why is he going this way, whatever. It's just kind of a chess match. But I don't know, kind of the no-brainer answer that comes to my mind is stay out, go in only when you have to.
Go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one. Human presence is the biggest thing that's going to drive deer off, which is basically the question he's asking when there's pressure all around. Well, he probably means when there's people all around. So if there's people all around and you don't have people in your woods, then that's where the deer will probably be. But kind of a lot of variables. How big's the property? What kind of features does it have? I think if you can give the deer everything in one property, which is almost impossible, that's going to hold more deer. So the food, the security, the cover, the water, just everything they need throughout the whole hunting season at least, that's going to be a big help. But I think for the most part, when there's heavy pressure, the thicker, to a certain extent, the better the property. The more cover, the better. I know at our property, which we're doing a lot of cutting on, and we did hinge cutting and had AWS up, and they really thickened certain parts of it up. We have plenty of deer in there because we're not entering it and walking around. We're giving them their space. And I know last season we had, I was just talking to one of the neighbors, and we drove up the road next to the property, and he hadn't been seeing much. It was the gun season here in Minnesota, so there are a lot of people out there. And we just drove, 10 feet into the property, and I think it was 5 or 6 does jumped out of the brush pile, sitting there and ran away. He's like, I haven't seen that many does all week. How do you get this many deer? And it's like, that's just normal, for us, but you kind of take it for granted. Give them the cover, stay out, let them feel safe there, and I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's kind of, I agree with what both of you said, and it's kind of counterintuitive thinking, and it's a hard thing to swallow to say, well, how do you hold deer on your property when you have pressure all around and it's hunting season? Stay out. Well, that's a hard thing to understand and a hard thing to do because as hunters, some of us have limited time and limited windows, and you got to get in there and hunt when you can. So, yeah, as much as I would say stay out, stay out, but you got to get in there and hunt too. I think this is kind of a twofold question. I think one, JJ had the answer to is give them everything that you can give them to hold them there. So if you can give them cover, if you can give them a good food source, give them water, give them all the things that they need so that they don't have to leave, obviously you can hold more deer on your property. But, now moving into the season right around the corner and you're thinking to yourself right now, well, what should I do? I know I have all this pressure around me or maybe on the property I'm hunting. How do I combat that? And sometimes you can't combat that. A perfect example of that is, a deer that JJ shot this past year in Minnesota, which Hunt Breakdown's coming out here, I think potentially next week. But I think that when you're hunting a property like that, you have to spend some extra time and understand what the deer are doing. Because if you have deer there, it doesn't mean they're always going to be pressured off. They're just going to do things to adapt to that pressure. Sometimes you can't control that pressure, but really focus on your deer herd and understand what they're doing. So pay attention when they're getting bumped, by people or, by your neighbors or by you. Pay attention to where they go because they're going to go somewhere where they feel safe. So, maybe use that to your advantage and try to slip in or access different points around your farm, to be there when those deer get pressured from other spots. So that's a $1 million question. I think every hunter deals with that in some retrospect. And maybe, Andrew, you can speak to this a little bit because you do a lot of public land hunting. You dealt with that some in Iowa. But I think it's a matter of understanding where your deer are going to go to feel safe. A lot of the time, like JJ said, that's your really thick areas that's going to hold pressured deer especially. But your access is going to have to be even more key when you're hunting pressured deer like that. Picking your windows and just trying to be as cautious, scent-free, try to do everything that you can the right way. It's still possible to shoot a big deer that's pressured, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, my Iowa hunt, there was public land. I met a lot of different guys and gals down there, and I was worried because typically, like Minnesota, like public land, it gets pressured really hard, and if it's pressured, it's usually not a good spot normally. There are a few little honey holes here and there, but again, getting back into the Iowa, I used that human traffic, that human pressure to my advantage. I knew where my buck was pretty much sleeping during the day or where his bedroom was, and the majority of the hunting pressure was going straight down the middle of the property, which there was a road to get to. I would wait for them guys to go in or get done or come out or whatever, and I would use a back door. I'd access the property differently, and I just knew that particular buck that I was chasing would not go over that way because you knew that's where all the pressure was. So maybe you got to try to figure out how can I use this pressure to my advantage. One little tidbit that I recently learned after doing a few hunt breakdowns, Ben Rising, he'll go in on a piece of property. He doesn't always necessarily tiptoe in. Like he'll be loud like he's like a farmer or drive his truck or like his side by side, whatever. So he doesn't, like I say, he doesn't tiptoe in. He's not being quiet about it, but then again, he's not being loud or obnoxious either, slamming truck doors, blaring the radio, whatever. He's doing what, the farmers around the area are doing. They're driving their tractors or driving their trucks, slamming doors, whatever. They're not necessarily being quiet about it. So that's kind of another thing maybe you could look into doing or whatever.
Yeah, and typically farmers are out in the ag fields and out in the opening, so they're in theory on the edge of the property. So if you can work the outsides of the property or the outsides of the timber or your neighboring borders or whatnot, I think that keeps the pressure off the core or the bedding too. Kind of give that to the deer. And you could still jump in there for some hunts during the rut, or if you got some intel where you need to jump in there, but for the most part, yeah, use those edges, use those perimeters, act like the neighbor and walk in on the fence line, or act like the farmer and use a tractor or whatnot.
Yeah,
go buy a new tractor, right?
Yeah, there you go. As hard as it may be sometimes, we hear people talk all the time about sanctuaries, but that may be difficult if you don't have a very big piece that you can hunt, to establish a sanctuary. But if you can do that, that can really benefit you too. I mean, giving those deer that safe zone is huge because they will stay in there, especially when they're being pressured. So, like JJ said, as much as you can hunt the edges, and maybe if you have the ability to put a cell cam into the more core areas of your property, use those cellular cams, let them send you the intel and tell you when to go in and hunt those deer. Outside of that, stay out of there, give it to the deer, pick your windows, hunt the edges, and then be aggressive when you have to.
Yeah. I mean, I got one piece of property up in northern Minnesota. This one deer I've been chasing for the last 3-4 years now. I call him tripod. He's only got 3 working legs. Goofy looking rack. He might be like 120 inches this year. But my first encounter with him, he ended up coming through the exact same way the next following few years. So I kind of have him on a pattern. It seems to be like that last week, October 22nd to the 27th. He comes and hits this exact same scrape, or he comes in the exact same way. So again, it takes a few years to kind of like develop that kind of pattern with a particular deer, but I'm going to use that to my advantage to go in and hunt that week. Again, I don't have that large a piece of property. It might be 40, 50 acres, and I just don't have a lot of cover. I got some water on it. I don't have any food. I didn't do any planting this year. So, I mean, I'm kind of got an uphill battle, so to speak, but I know from previous years that October 22nd to like the 27th, that deer is going to be there. He's eventually going to show up. Don't know if it's going to be an AM or a PM, but it just seems to be that particular week he's going to be there. And you can bet that I'm definitely going to try to get in a stand there, or I'm going to be like, hey, Dad, you should probably go in there because I know there's at least one buck to come cruising through here this particular time. So, again, that's me putting pressure off the smaller piece that I have. And I got hunting pressure all around it. Come gun season, everyone and their cousins are out there, making noise, shooting a bunch of deer, or just having fun, just doing their traditional deer camp. So I'm kind of using that to like my advantage. I just know there's a short window that I got for this particular deer. But again, it takes some time to kind of develop that creature's habit or what his schedule is. But it is possible. So maybe go back and look at your trail camera pictures, been like, okay, this is what the weather was doing then. This is what he was coming in on this side, whatever. Just try to put those little pieces of the puzzle together if you still have all your trail camera pictures, and you might be able to, put the odds in your favor, even if you do have a small piece of property and if it's high pressure too.
And that leads perfectly into the next question.
Awesome.
The next question from Tanner Wolfcool, which talks about that window. How to kill in the first 10 days on your home farm. We'll go with Lemke on this one.
I like this question a lot. And if somebody has an answer out there that is definitive and lets me know how to kill for sure in the first 10 days on my farm, please call. They'll put my number at the bottom of the screen or something, because I would love to know that too. But no, that's a great question. I really like it because I think it's something that we're all trying to figure out right now. And I don't want to steal JJ's thunder because I'm looking at his notes over here. And one of the notes he has is spot on. I think, first of all, you have to have a buck to kill in the first 10 days on your farm if you're going to kill one. I've heard Mark Drury say it a lot of times on a lot of their farms. They just don't have any bucks there during the summer. And he would rather have it that way. Now they do, and they shoot big deer early. But on some of their farms, and it's just like everybody's, the bucks aren't there. They're off on their summer patterns right now. There's beans and there's big ag everywhere. So a deer can really bed up anywhere, step out in the Midwest here in any part of wherever they are, and have plenty to feed on, right? So with so much ag around right now, sometimes you just don't have a deer to shoot. Now that is going to change here coming up pretty quick. They're going to shed their velvet like we talked about earlier. Testosterone levels are going to change, and then they're going to disperse and they'll end up in different areas. But that early season, it can be feast or famine. I mean, you can have all the bucks on you right now, and then they're going to disperse 2 weeks into the season or even before the season. You might be on the other end of that candle though, where, you don't have any bucks on you now, but, you have does, and, those bucks, once they change, they're going to come and they're going to be by you in those October months. So I think number one key thing, to think about is you have to have the ability, or you have to have those bucks there in the first 10 days to be able to kill them.
Yeah, so if I look at this topic and I just take out the last 4 words, how to kill in the first 10 days, well, that's easy. You just find them. But if it's on your home farm, you better have a buck. So that's why we typically try to get permission on a couple different spots, because, you just might not have a big buck early season. But if you do have a big buck, it's time to act, especially if you don't have a lot of cover and your property's not very good in the fall during the rut or late season. You should probably hunt hard right away and try to get the job done, because that's probably your only chance those first 10 days. So first 10 days are great. I always hear, the first couple weeks of the season and then the last couple weeks of the season are when most people shoot the giants, and I think that's true. Those are when the patterns really show themselves. So bucks heading to bean fields, or bucks heading to standing corn, late in the year, or whatever it may be. You can get patterns, and then you can capitalize on that. So first 10 days, find the big buck, find a pattern, and then use kind of the things we talk about in a lot of our hunt breakdowns, that cold weather, those temp drops, some weather changes, whether it's, just after a rain, big heavy rain for a day or two, and then it stops. Try to get in there right after that. A wind change, really windy, and then it starts to calm down. So try to figure out some weather change that also, puts the bucks on their feet. Look at the moon. We always use the moon guide, which has worked well in the past, and try to line up a few things to your advantage and try to capitalize on those first 10 days. Because it might not be the first, couple days of the season. If it's super hot and there's no wind, or, whatever the case may be. So find the buck, find the pattern, and then try to find some weather elements that really give you that good opportunity, and then just act on it, because that's your time. And you'll probably get a couple chances if you don't mess it up.
Yeah, it really just comes down to, you got to have the buck to kill, or, a few bucks to kill. If you don't got them, then obviously you're not going to kill them in 10 days. I'd say over the few years that I've done some filming for some TV shows and some digital shows, it seems like a water hole seems to be really key, especially early season. I know there's a couple shows that I've done some work with in the past. Literally like opening weekend, we usually seem to get an opportunity, at least one big one. And when I say big one, it's going to be over 160 some inches. But I mean, I don't know, it's kind of a hard question. How do you kill in the first 10 days? You just got to have the deer, really.
Yeah, you got to have the deer, but scouting is huge, and scouting is huge all year round. But in my opinion, right now is the time to be doing your homework, because bucks, deer, they're patternable right now. There's less going on than in the rut and the pre-rut, when they have a million things on their mind. Bucks are on a summer pattern, and you can still kind of catch them, hopefully, at the beginning of the season on that summer pattern. So run your trail cameras and watch them religiously right now. Again, that's why cell cameras are so crucial. I'm getting inventory every single day and understand what's going on out there. So use your tools to your advantage. If you can't get out there, do some velvet scouting. A lot of times right now, bucks are, they're not pressured. They're moving before dark, so you can kind of see what they're doing and you can pattern them. Now, be efficient at it. Do it from a distance, whether it's trail cameras or just, out driving around or glassing from a distance. But figure out where they're coming out and get in there. Try to hang your stands in advance. We're getting close now. If you haven't hung your stands yet, get them up, get them out there. So, you can let them sit for as long as possible. If you got to go in last minute, be scent free, do it strategically, pay attention to your wind. But, just do your homework this time of year, because if you have the deer there, you should be able to maybe get an opportunity. If you're really cautious, you do your homework, you plan, you try to pick a right window, watch the moon, look for a red moon day, look for a cool day. But, rely on the tools that you have, rely on your scouting to get you in close on a big buck early season. Which leads into the next question. Early season calling tactics and strategies. There are actually a couple questions, so it's just kind of more of a general topic. Is it possible to call during this time? Andrew?
Yeah, a little bit, I would say. I don't have a whole lot of experience like calling. I did in my Iowa hunt last year, just because it seems for me the spots I hunt in Minnesota, like our deer just don't seem to be very callable. But from the behaviors I've noticed when I've done a few filming gigs. It seems like the younger bucks are kind of like tickling their antlers lightly. They're kind of doing a little bit of sparring and stuff. I haven't noticed a whole lot of vocalization, so I guess I would say my little tidbit would just be, maybe do break out your rattling system, if that's a black rax or a bag, whatever it might be, and just lightly do a little bit of tickling. Be my little tip or how to answer that question.
Yeah, and I'll go into a hunt that we broke down a couple years ago called Double Split. That was October 4th, and I actually rattled and called him in. And the rattling that I used, which I would consider that early season. Some people, that's the first week of their season. Some people, that may be a month into the season, but early October, I would consider early season. But yeah, I was using the black racks. If you watch the breakdown, I actually talk about I rattled behind my back because he circled about 75 yards away, and I tried to direct my sound with the rattling behind me. So I rattled behind my back, kind of shot that off in the field behind me, and then like all bucks do, he did the circle around trying to get downwind. So everything worked out pretty well, and gave me a perfect shot. But yeah, just keep it light early in the year, and then sparring. The bucks I see it all the time, and we film it all the time around here, where we get a couple small bucks coming early, hour and a half early to a food plot or food source, and they're out there. You can hear them from a couple hundred yards away sparring, and antlers are kind of just tickling around, and they do that all afternoon or all night. So that's a strategy I really like, and then just some light grunts, doe bleed here and there. But that would be my suggestion for blind calling. And then if you do see a deer, it's a little easier in the early season with all that cover to kind of direct him and read him and communicate without him seeing you, because you have so much cover. So it's definitely possible early in the season. You just got to be natural and just kind of use some things to your advantage and think different.
Absolutely. I can picture the sound of it right now, or just the whole picture of, sitting in a tree stand, kind of sun still up a little bit, that golden lighting, it's really green, and you hear that distinct tickle of antlers. That's such a normal thing that you hear in the woods early season. And, talking with Mr. Welcome to the Deer Society, Mike, your dad, he preaches communicating. And I think that deer are definitely callable early season to an extent. Now, you're not going to call the same way early season as you would call during the rut. But, try to think how to communicate with the deer. Don't call at them, communicate with them. And, do what other deer are doing. Deer are still in this social kind of pattern. They're always social creatures, but as much as they're dispersing, they still are trying to figure out what that pecking order looks like, what the home ranges are. They're trying to figure everything out at this point, for what's going to happen in a few weeks here when the breeding season comes. So I would say, yeah, use your rattling horns to your advantage. Use your black rack. Do some tickling. Create that social environment. Paint that social picture that a big buck might get interested in. Might want to come check out, see what's going on.
Yeah, because they have their guard down early, and they're used to being around a lot of bucks. With the bachelor groups just starting to break up. So they're used to seeing a lot of bucks, thinking that other bucks are around. So it's definitely a good time. One key thing calling early is you better have your scent control game on and your wind directions right, and playing the thermals, because there's a lot of moisture in the air and it's just hot and you're sweaty, and it can go bad quick if you're not ready and you're not prepared and you don't have your stand set up perfect with an entry trail and everything we do with phase scent control wise, and like I said, playing the wind and thermals. But the bucks are willing to come in early, so get everything kind of prepared, know your tools, and get the job done.
Yeah, it can really help you. I think. I don't think that a lot of guys think about calling this early in the year. And again, I want to stress this. You're not going to call early season like you're going to call during the rut. It's a very, very light tickling. And, it's amazing how well the animals that we're hunting can hear. They can hear way better than us. And you think about how far away that you can hear two little bucks sparring. That sound travels a long way. So, definitely light calling, light tickling can definitely work to your advantage early season.
Yeah, and another thing too, being that it's so dense and heavy cover, it seems like, and it's not the rut, so they're not aggressive. It seems like everything I've seen early, the bucks come in slower. and they're, looking around and trying to figure it out, and they're taking their time. There's not a rush. There's not a hot doe over there, and it's, peak rut breeding season. He doesn't need to run over. So it takes time. I mean, it could take a half hour for a buck to actually respond and circle in, and it might be dark by that time too. So just some things to keep in mind with early season calling.
Definitely don't get antsy and do a rattling sequence and then like, okay, nothing's happened, I need to do it again. No, just take your time, go slow, because like you just got done saying, these older mature bucks are just, they're moving like snails. They're not in a rush to get anywhere because no one's ready to start breeding yet.
Right.
So this question is from Jack Retz, and he wants to know, how aggressive or passive will you be this time of the year? So I'll throw that to JJ and let you start that one.
Well, it kind of goes back to those first 10 days. If there's a big buck and he's on a pattern, I'm going to be extremely aggressive. But hopefully I have my stand already set weeks in advance. I know that pattern, or I know the property from past years, so I have some history with that. But from a actual hunting standpoint, aggressive. From some of the other aspects, calling and this and that, not aggressive at all. Very passive on that. But as far as moving in and being on the X, I think if you got a big buck and he's heading to a food source and you have the perfect stand, perfect wind, I'm not going to wait, and I'm going to go in right away.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, because they're probably still on a little bit of their summer pattern, and then it's a ticking time bomb when they're going to go into their fall pattern. They might just disappear for a couple weeks or a month, or towards the end of your season. So you got, like you said, if you got a buck to kill and you got them on a pattern, be aggressive. Like, don't let off. And usually within hopefully the short amount of time you can get success out of it. Otherwise, if you don't have anything, I would say maybe use caution. Like, don't be as aggressive if you do have a buck that's patternable or that you think you can get on. If you don't have anything going on, just kind of like tread water, going lightly, and maybe hunt your observation stands, or maybe hunt the farthest point from where your food sources are, so then you can observe. You might be able to catch something in the shadows moving, and then maybe jump to that stand the next sit or whatever. But yeah, it just comes down to what you have that's killable and what you can get on. If you don't, then I would say just use caution and just kind of tread lightly. Better hunting is to come.
Yeah, I think be aggressive but smart. Definitely a great time to be aggressive if your tools are telling you that you have a deer to be aggressive to go after. Again, I'm paying attention to my trail cameras religiously right now. Like, my Tacticam reveals are out there. They're sending me data every day. And I don't know, with the season 2 weeks away, I don't know if I'm going to be aggressive yet or not. My cameras all the way leading up to that week and that day are going to tell me how aggressive I need to be. Now, I have things in place where if I need to be aggressive, I think that I can do that. I understand my property. I understand where the deer are moving right now. And, if a buck is still there and presenting himself, then yeah, I'm going to dive right in there. But be smart. I don't think it's a time to, dive right into the center of your property earlier, because like Andrew said, some of the best hunting is yet to come. So you don't want to blow it up or push deer to, the neighbors, or, make a deer nocturnal when you don't have to. But definitely a great opportunity right now to kill a patternable buck. There's not a lot of surprises right now, I don't think. I am a believer in, right now, I think guys that run a lot of trail cameras and understand their property, they're not going to go out there and regularly be surprised by a buck that they see or something like that. Now, I'm not saying rely 100% on your trail cameras, because that's not the case. But this time of year, summer pattern-wise, I think that you should, if you're doing your homework, have a pretty good idea before you go set the opportunity that you potentially could have. I don't think that there's going to be a ton of surprises. Now, sure, deer, they move on certain days and don't move on others. I'm not saying that there's no variables involved, but this is a time where I think you can really use your tools to your advantage. Let your deer and your intel dictate how much, aggressive, or how aggressive you're going to be right out of the gate. I think another thing is too, and it's, again, watching when your deer are moving, but early season, I would find it really hard for somebody or myself to tell you to go out there and get after a deer in the morning early season. Now, that being said, there are cases where you can do that if you have really bulletproof access, or there's certain things that obviously can change there or change that theory. But a lot of the time you can do more harm than good going into your spot in the morning, because deer are actively feeding. They're up on their feet. You bump them in the morning, well, in the dark, you may never see them again. Where deer, you can slip in there during the daytime. Deer, it's hot, they're not expending a lot of energy during that time, so they're probably bedded up. You're not going to bump a bunch of deer going in the afternoon. Let the deer come to you. So my answer to that question is be aggressive, but be smart about it. Err on the side of evening hunting early. Let the deer come to you, and if you have a deer there, man, go on and kill them.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because now I'm thinking about, well, I think I'm going to be extremely aggressive, or have been in early season in the past, and now I think about it, those stands are bulletproof. They're a transition to the food from bedding, a lot of space in between, and I'm just, perpendicular access in with great wind, playing the wind, my scent control's on point. So I'm aggressive because I'm hunting, but I'm not aggressive as in diving into the bedding or sitting on top of the bean field and blowing the deer out at night. So it's aggressive as in making a move, but also waiting till everything kind of lines up, having all my gear prepped, and hunting a spot where I can also get out at night when we're hunting evenings and not blow all the deer off a field or something too. So that's a good point. Be smart.
I would say, if you're a guy that, can't run a bunch of trail cameras, or can't be on your property all the time, or you're hunting a new property and you're going in there and you're just like, man, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's exciting. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's awesome. Being able to dive into a new property and not knowing what's there, or just going out and, not knowing what you're going to see. That's awesome. I would just say be cautious in doing that on the front end. If you have to pick a window to do that, save it for a few weeks down the road here. Save it for that October time, because, you might have a little more success doing that, going in a little more blind. So if you're weighing the options and saying, look, I have 5, 6, 7 days to hunt, going in kind of blind, should I do it early? Because, I've heard big bucks are killable early. Yeah, maybe wait a little bit, because big bucks are still really killable when they, start messing up, start becoming more daylight visible too later in the year. So, again, let that intel, that known intel, dictate what you're going to do early.
And it's not something that you got to pick up overnight. It comes with a few years of experience, or, in my case, I'm going to Illinois. I ain't never been on this piece of property. I have no idea what's going on. So I'm going to go out there earlier and get cameras kind of hung up and kind of start gathering my research. Do I really want to be in the woods right then and there? Yeah, I really do, because I'm anxious, I'm excited, but I don't want to mess up, when I get closer to the end of October. It seems like when a lot of other guys from Deer Society shoot their bigger deer, or you start seeing a lot more bigger deer showing up. So again, it just kind of goes with, you have to have a few years of experience with a particular piece of property. But like you said, if it's new, whatever, I would just save your hunting for when the better hunting is to come.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think that kind of wraps up our questions. We'll definitely keep logging questions, keep sending them to us, because we're going to do this more often. I think it's been pretty fun. It's got us excited, and it's got our brains going. And obviously, we want to give you guys as much information as we can to help you be more successful. And we truly hope that you are this fall. We have 2 weeks left to the season here to kind of end. What do we got going on 2 weeks before the season? Time's ticking. What are you thinking? What are you doing?
Yeah, that's what I was actually just going to bring up is, what do we have left to do 2 weeks? And it's different for everybody. A lot of seasons open in October. They got a little bit more time, but, it's time to really finalize a lot of things. Your bow should be dialed in now. You should be, final stand prep. Get those last stands in if you're not on a big buck. If you're on a big buck, get ready, because it's coming quick. But if you need to cut some trails to get into your stands for that October, November time period, or trim some tree branches, or, do it now, get everything ready. Now's the time of the year where I think a week or two before you're hunting, I think your gear should be, extremely clean, wash everything, use your phase system, start air drying things out, airing things out. Just have everything ready, because all summer, you're shooting your bow. And I'm not saying you shouldn't shoot your bow during the season, but this time of the year, maybe you're, give it a good clean, because you got grease on your hands. You got, whether the string's touching your face, start to just really get all your gear clean, the bed of your truck, clean that out, and just get everything ready. Be familiar with all your equipment, camera gear, whatnot, and it's almost here.
We do a couple loads of laundry with like nothing in it, just to kind of clean the pipes out and switch over to, some scent soaps or some scent-free laundry soap. Kind of clean it out. Not all of us have the luxury of having separate washes for just hunting gear and then regular daily clothes. So definitely go through your washer and dryer and kind of clean her up, for hunting season.
I think the term that you were looking for there was phase. You were searching a little bit. But
Phase, yes. Yes, phase.
Phase it out.
No, yeah, absolutely, though, to his point, and that's not a shameless plug, but, I know I'm doing that, running phase through my washer right now and just trying to clean that out, washing towels with phase. And once you wash your clothes, like JJ said, air dry 'em. Boots is a big thing. I know your boots are probably sitting outside right now. I bet money on it. Get that gear cleansed and just get it airing out. Get it ready. I know we're still a couple weeks out, but that makes a big difference. Don't just pull your boots or pull your clothes out of the package or out of the box or bag or whatever it is the day before and go hunting. Because again, especially as much as you can have success early or during the rut or whenever, deer early are being cautious. They're aware they're killable, but you have to be on your game too. You may only have one shot at it. So, why not put all the variables in your favor if you can? Try to control as many of them as you can, because look, these are still wild animals and, they have the advantage. I don't care what you say or who says what, they have the advantage. So, do everything you can, be prepared as you can right now. I would say I just kind of got done with most of our work out there. Spent the day out on one of our properties yesterday, got tree stands hung, did all of our trimming, finalized some trail camera spots. I will say one of the things that we did was we kind of not dove right into the middle of our property, but went into some certain spots that we won't go now unless we're going to hunt later in the year, put up some cellular cameras when we're going to leave them sit. We won't go back in there unless we're going to dive in there and hunt for a day. When really the cameras tell us to. So, if you have any last minute spots where you got to dive in and get that stuff done, go do it now. So it's ready for later in the year. You don't have to go back in there, give those deer their safety area, their safety net, and get ready for the season. It's fun. It's so interesting. I know that we all feel this way. Deer season ends and it's like, man, it's so long now until, you're going to see a deer just even with a rack again. And then next thing you know, you're picking up sheds and deer growing their racks. And then June and July absolutely disappear. Nobody knows where they go. And boom, here we are, September. And it's like deer season's here. So it's
and you're scrambling to get out to get those last minute preps or pick up that extra gear or whatever it is. Seems like you got all the time in the world. And then boom, it's like, oh, here we are again.
Yeah. And if your schedule doesn't allow you to get out there, right now when you need to, if you work a lot or whatever the case may be, have family or other things going on, if you do have a window coming up where there's a big, heavy rain, it's never a bad idea to go out there in the rain, or just before the rain to try to do a little bit of this work too. So just an option if that's all all you got.
That's definitely a big pet peeve for me. I always wait for some sort of weather front to come in that's going to put moisture down and wash away my scent, so I don't have to worry about, messing something up or whatever it might be. Definitely there's been multiple times where I've been out in pouring rain hanging up stands or cameras or whatever, but also be safe about it too. Wear your harness, or if you can bring a buddy just so you got an extra spotter in case something does happen.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. Exciting time of year. Good luck out there in the woods. Send us all your photos. Let us know what you're seeing. Questions, comments, man, put them on our YouTube page, put them on social pages, because we want to talk about them. We're going to be doing podcasts throughout the fall. Hunt breakdowns, brand new ones are coming out here starting like this next week. We got some really good ones from last fall, really awesome stories. So some of the best content yet is to come this fall. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. Don't forget Deer Society app. It's free. All kinds of great content on there. Some good tips, tricks, tutorials, all kinds of good stuff out there. So good luck this fall. Thanks for watching, listening, and we'll see you here soon.